Invasion, a history of strife and conquest. Ireland and its people survived these centuries of pillage and suppression to rock. The sufferings and frustrations of the Irish in their beautiful yet stormy island lie in the past. Foreign invaders came through the mists of history and left a crumbling network of houses and castles built by Norman knights for their own protection. The English followed to occupy some and to build others. Material was close at hand, limestone in abundance, and labor was cheap. But what ingenuity and calculated effort those medieval stonemasons must have used. For almost 5 centuries, the main capital expenditure was on self-preservation behind impregnable walls, now crumbling. Old ruins like Holy Cross Abbey proclaim the wealth of labor, devotion, and faith that are part of this island's heritage. These jigsaw puzzles of masonry stand, despite the ravages of time and plunder, as monuments to gargantuan engineering feats centuries before the invention of steel and concrete. The Rock of Cashel, St. Patrick's Rock, is a limestone anticline, a fold in the Earth's crust. But its association with the inner core of Ireland's history makes it one of the most revered monuments in the land, a timeless thing of a jewel in stone. It was here the legendary kings of Munster were crowned, and here they lived. St. Patrick baptized a pagan king on this rock about the year 450 AD. Later, the Castile of the Kings was granted to the religious by Irish King generations of dead miners from Cornwall, English silver miners. Some miners' houses remain as evidence of a mining venture, and the older folk of the village talk of attempts to mine silver and lead, which failed. Now, Irish-Canadian mine finders with teams of Canadian geologists renew the search for minerals. Old maps indicate the location of early mine workings. The mine finders' confidence of success is tempered by years of experience in the hard rock mining areas of Canada. As young boys, some of them warily explored the gouged-out hillsides, old shafts, tunnels, pits, and other burrows, but left Ireland to make their fortune overseas. Perhaps it was the topography of Ireland, with its heavy layer of topsoil, that discouraged the prospecting for mines in the past. These Irish Canadians returned with the very latest in mine-finding tools and instruments, not knowing what they would find, but convinced that the earlier attempts had only scratched the surface. Today, geology is a sophisticated science. Young geologists looked at the old workings with new eyes and understanding. They found rich samples in outcropping rocks and in the chips they picked up left by some early prospector. They found more evidence of minerals in the chips they took from the rocks in old stone fences, which, they reasoned, had originally been found close by. They used the latest scientific means of detecting metallic ores. Not only did they walk through bogs and over pasture lands, but they flew over the countryside in helicopters with complicated instruments that rained electrical impulses down through the surface to bounce back from mineralization lying deep in the ground. The work went on with only one goal in mind: find ore. But most important, find a pay dirt area large enough to make a mine. Their complex instruments gave indications of ore bodies: lead, zinc, copper, and traces of silver lying deep under the green overburden, away from the old mine sites. Mineralized structures were traced for miles, and the prospect of actual mine operations became a fact. As the search added more details to the assessment of potential wealth stored below, the mine developers began to raise the capital needed for work to begin. An army of men, machines, and equipment had to be assembled. The climax came in 1962, when the Tynaw deposit showed promise, and the Northgate mine came into being as a rich open pit operation. At about the same time, Mogul Mines Limited, on the findings of an extensive geological, geophysical survey and diamond drilling program, selected the site for a shaft to be sunk into the lead-zinc ore body lying deep below the old workings at Silvermines in Tipperary County. Further south, on the other side of the mountains, Gortram Mines Limited completed their survey and proved up an area to be mined and began an open pit operation. Gortram's Irish-born mining superintendent got his mining experience in Canada. He brought his French-Canadian wife home to Ireland and named his Limerick house after her hometown, Noranda, in Quebec. Rio Tinto at Kiel in Longford County, to the north, sunk an exploratory shaft. Near the center of these mining areas is the old town of Neenah, an old stronghold of early power and politics. Its main street, a typical example of a market town centered in a rich agricultural district, a town of substantial shops and banks, where the new capital from the mines is beginning to make itself felt, where neighbors are friendly and visitors always welcome. Hotels, stores, and pubs have all taken on a new look, all proudly display an Irish family name. The daily traffic on the main street will include donkey carts, hauling milk to the local creamery, and every other form of transportation wait their turn to unload cans of milk. On market day, scores of splendid animals will pass by on the way to the auction barn, where keen-eyed buyers match wits with farmers and auctioneers. The flow of money from the miners' pockets is rapidly changing market habits. Supermarkets replace small stores. Old hotels and little pubs, which never expected to expand, are now growing in size. Ireland entered the jet age with a jet set of saints. Each aircraft in the Irish Aer Lingus fleet is named for an Irish saint. For many years, Irishmen left their homes for the Americas, where it was claimed you could dig for gold in the streets. In those days of mass immigration, there was neither the knowledge, the freedom, or the capital to realize the existence of the rich ore bodies lying under the Irish hills. None of those who left found gold in the streets. Some of the hardy ones did find work in Canadian gold mines. Families who grew up in the north woods of Canada arrive by air to live in Ireland, because the head of the family is a hard rock miner involved in Ireland's latest industrial expansion, metal mining. Canada's link with Ireland is as old as the first ocean crossings, and as new as Air Canada's jets. Not only do these maple leaf crested planes fly the Dooleys, the Ryans, and O'Connors from their adopted Canada to visit the folk back home, but they bring Irish mine finders and developers, French-Canadian shaft sinkers, Finnish-Canadian blasting experts, diamond drillers, and geologists. The Canadian miners arrive with their family friends who have never underground. Canadian rock miners are at home underground and are a new environment on the surface. Mogul made preparations to house its personnel as surface construction and shaft sinking progressed. Comfortable houses were built in the town of Neenah with spacious lawns and open village green spaces, for this is the way the modern miner lives. Canadian wives have learned to shop with pounds, shillings, and pence instead of dollars and cents, and they have learned to drive their cars on the wrong side of the road. Children attend Irish schools and study the Gaelic, for Ireland is, as Canada, a bilingual country. There are few capital cities in the world that have retained their mark of individuality to the degree Dublin has. In Dublin, everybody seems to be going somewhere. Ladies to find bargains, while men select Irish woolens for their ladies. Tourists seek out Waterford crystal to send to the folks back home. On the quays of the River Liffey are the imposing Customs House building and the 4 courts that house the state judiciary. The Dáil, Ireland's parliament, conducts matters of state. Irish hospitals receive a substantial income from the international exciting flutter of the sweepstakes. The Bank of Ireland is stern with noble proportions. And across the Liffey stands the contrasting architecture of the new Abbey Theatre. Dublin is famed for its 18th century Georgian houses, house after house in almost regimented sequence. And its Abbey Tavern singers. Cities like Limerick on the Shannon were the high water way for marauding Danes and Norman invaders. Limerick's Georgian homes are marks of a later period of flourishing business and finance. Killaloe, on the banks of the Shannon, is both ancient and modern, a summer inland water playground. A city of churches, the historic Protestant Church of Ireland, St. Flannan's Cathedral, and the modern Roman Catholic parish church. In the churchyard, the remains of an ancient oratory, built originally in 1000 AD on Friars Island, was reconstructed. The island was submerged by the Shannon hydroelectric development in the 1920s. To the south, across the Shannon estuary, the thatched village of Adair lies timeless in a soft green setting. Streets lined with precisely thatched houses, shaded by a canopy of tall trees, make this the most beautiful village in all Ireland. Inland waters once carried Viking longships deep into the heart of this Gaelic island. Lough Derg has harbored fleets of dragon ships. Contact with the Norsemen left a seafaring heritage deeply rooted in Ireland's past. The Lough Derg Yacht Club proudly flies one of the oldest burgies in Europe. Every Irishman admires good horsemanship and fine bloodstock. Ireland's race meets and horse shows attract horse lovers from around the world. Here, world-famous horse breeders and small Irish farmers vie for the winner's ribbon. Limestone, grass, and climate have combined to make Ireland famous as the breeding center for horses of high quality. Warming waters of the Gulf Stream pound at the cliffs of Moher, carving caves and ledges for birds in the 700-foot face of the rock. Throughout the 15th century, the Anglo-Irish aristocracy lived well off the land they controlled. Bunratty Castle, where barons, earls, and their bejeweled ladies enjoyed splendid banquets, offers those same exquisite delicacies today for any who find their way to Bunratty Castle, to wine and dine in the manner of our forefathers. In the shadow of the castle is a luxurious motor hotel catering to visitors from around the world. The surrounding park has been transformed into a village with authentic cottages of fisher and farm folk reconstructed stone by stone, timber by timber. In contrast, Mogul with its sentinel-like head frame is a symbol of a new Irish industry, metal mining. The government of the Republic of Ireland has been alert in recognizing the importance of mining to the economy of the country by granting tax relief to new mines and encouraging continued exploration. This lead-zinc mine was discovered in 1963. Mining engineers, shaft sinkers, and drillers were engaged to sink a shaft 930 feet into the rock and cut the drifts. The office had to be staffed in keeping with modern technology. A computer was installed, for guesswork has no place in a modern mine. Engineers and geologists chart the progress of the mine and plan future production. The underground workings of a mine are still a mystery to many. Mogul employs 425 people. 180 of them work underground. Irishmen, men from the farms, the fishing fleets, and the factories team up with experienced miners, and extensive training programs are undertaken. The underground teams follow the tried and proven method of hard rock mining. Drill, blast, and muck to get maximum tonnage of ore-bearing rock to the surface each shift. The mine works round the clock to supply 3,000 tons of ore daily to the mill. Rock drills and slushers become the familiar tools of the Irish miners. Modern mining methods and technology, mining has become one of the safest industries for the worker. The safety of the worker is always the first consideration of mine management. Experienced miners instruct the tenderfoot, and trained safety engineers enforce all safety regulations underground. The back-breaking job of yesterday, loading muck with a hand shovel, is now long past. Today, mechanical loaders have taken over the loading of ore cars. The ore is loaded on cars at ore chutes and hauled to dumps, where it is dropped through an ore pass to the primary crusher deep at the bottom of the shaft. The primary crusher reduces the ore into a suitable size for hauling to the surface to feed the mill. The hoistman controls the operation of both the cage and the skip. The workhorse for the mine is the hoist. Muck from underground is hauled to the surface in a skip and dumped on an endless conveyor to feed the secondary crushers in the mill. It's the end of a working day for one shift. The men are brought to the surface. Grime streaks their hands and faces, but the smiles are there and the jaunty stride of a hard rock man. As the underground men change shift, so too do the mill operators, for the mill operation cannot be interrupted. To begin the milling process, the ore is fed through the secondary crushers until it is in pieces small enough to feed the rod and ball mills. These mills crush the ore in drums containing loose steel rods or balls, a noisy process which grinds the ore to a fine, powder-like gray flour. Chemicals are added, which separate the lead and zinc particles from waste rock. The mixture passes to the flotation tanks, where it is kept in constant circulation. As the bubbles rise to the surface, they collect minute particles of metal in solution. The bubbles are scraped off by revolving paddles. Testing is continuous to ensure that the recovery of metal is kept at the highest possible percentage. Nearly every operation in the mill is controlled automatically. Samples are taken from the mining and milling process and tested in the lab as a routine procedure. As the sludge from the flotation cells collects, excess water is filtered out. The concentrate is conveyed to the dryer, where most of the remaining moisture is removed. The dried concentrates of lead and zinc are loaded into railway cars from storage hoppers. To market the daily output of lead and zinc concentrates from Mogul, the largest mine in Western Europe, a rail spur line was constructed from the mine to the port of Foynes, some 50 miles away. Here, the cars are emptied, and the concentrate goes to the ore storage bin. From here, it's conveyed to the loading dock for the ocean freighters that come in on the Atlantic tides to be loaded for the smelters in Europe. Ireland today is a changing nation. Its industrial areas are expanding. Modern factories and branch plants are building in Dublin. And in the Shannon Airport area, a factory building program includes a community development to house workers and a tax-free inducement to foreign capital looking for factory space. The lonely flat brown bogs of the Irish countryside is the land of the turf cutters. For centuries, they supplied the cottages with fuel for cooking and heating. But with progress and development, Ireland now needs energy, power to light, power to run the wheels of the ever-growing industries. The limited water resources are already harnessed, and now the fields of turf are serving to fire the modern steam generators. Huge machines pre-dry the turf on the surface for direct firing into the furnaces to turn steam into electric power. Ireland has made impressive strides towards the industrialization that the country needs for self-sufficiency. But the average Irishman is still the farmer, the man of the country. The country life of Ireland will never change. There there will always be green fields and blue waters to beckon a pack of hounds for a morning frolic, and always a green pasture for well-bred Irish horses. This will always be Ireland, but the tempo of life is changing. Now, Irishmen stay at home to cope with building a nation which commands attention and respect as it enters the company of the world's mining nations.